Now here's what is important to us about this project. One, as I said, and I want to continue to say it because, you know, folks take it wherever they want. But it is not just a hashtag. We are organized in 26 cities. We're organized in Ontario, Canada, and in Ghana. And there are many more places that we just don't even know about. We know that folks are organizing in Colombia. Afro-Colombian domestic workers are organized under Black Lives Matter. We know that folks are organized in Palestine, in Spain, in France. There's a whole bunch of places where people are organized under Black Lives Matter. And it is a Black-led movement. It is a Black-led movement. Now, my sisters and I, we also want to rebuild the Black liberation movement. It's our task. We've had some of the OGs say to us, you can't use BLM, because when you use BLM, you're talking about the Black liberation movement. And we say, so are we. We are too. Now, as three queer Black women, one of whom is the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, we have not always been welcome in a movement that purports to fight for our liberation. That's just the truth. Now, I don't believe that Black folks are more homophobic than anybody else. So we should put that to bed. And the reality is, in our communities, in our families, in our homes, y'all know we got queer folks. That's been happening since the beginning of time. Let's not even tell that lie, that being gay is a white thing. Because everybody got that auntie. And we all know what I'm talking about. You know, I went to a meeting in 2007 during a gathering, a international gathering. And it was a meeting of forces from the Black community, who identify as a leftist. And folks were spitting the program. And here I was, in a room of about 50 people, mostly men, a few sisters. And folks were talking about the program to get free. And I was with it. But I didn't see myself in it. So I raised my hand. I said, I'm with this. But I have a question. What is the role for Black queer women in this liberation movement that we're building? And the room got silent. And then they moved on. My sister Patrice was in a similar conversation a few years later. And someone got so upset with her for asking that question. They spit in her face. This is 2015, y'all. We have some work to do. So our values and our principles and our vision of how we rebuild a Black liberation movement that has been targeted for demise, and they almost succeeded, is to bring the experiences of all Black lives into the center of the conversation. Because Black folks, we're not just men, we're not just women. We exist along the gender spectrum. It's just true. We are poor and working class, middle class, upper class. We are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. We are queer and trans. We are disabled. We are complex. We are complex people. That's what makes us beautiful. It's just true. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black lives, not just some. Now, why do we do that? I heard somebody say, you know, the gays are hijacking the Black liberation movement. Okay. What does it mean that we live in a society, and where is the outrage when Black transgender people are murdered? Just in the last 2 months, there have been over 10 trans people of color who have been killed, and most of them have been Black. Lamia Beard, Ty Underwood, Texas Payne, Taja Gabrielle De Jesus, Penny Proud, Bree Golek, Christina Gomez Reinwald, and those are just a few. Just 2 months into this year. When we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black lives. Now, I also want to address this question of all lives matter. It's true. We're all human beings. All lives matter. You can tweet that. Theoretically. But the reality is we live in a world where not all lives matter. Only some lives matter. So, if we want to get to the world where all Black lives matter, that means we fight like hell for Black lives today. Now, I also hear Black and brown lives matter, Muslim lives matter, police lives matter, blue lives matter. I was on campus today where folks said, I saw white lives matter. I was like, it's an obvious statement. I want to say something about that. It's true. Islamophobia is dangerous and ugly. It's a product of the same system that killed Black folks, imprisoned us, killed brown folks, at the border, in our communities. It's true. All of these lives matter. Here's what we're not doing. Oppression Olympics. I don't want to be the most oppressed. So let's get rid of that. We're not hashtag set tripping either. So let's get rid of that. And let me say something about the erasure of Black lives from the conversation. Now, Black Lives Matter is a project that was started from the labor and the love of Black women. So, why is it okay to take Black out of the conversation and replace it with a different conversation? It's not a new practice. We've seen it before, time and time again, throughout history. It's called colonialism. Where someone sees something they like, comes in, changes it around, and says it's theirs. Indigenous folks know that. The folks in San Diego know that, right? This isn't California. Right. Right? So, what is so hard? What is so hard about talking about Black lives? This is an uncomfortable question, especially for those of us who see ourselves in deep solidarity. We say, we get killed too. Why can't we? It's true. But is this the way to have the conversation? Do we erase Black lives so that we can have this other conversation? Or can we talk about where are the intersections? For example, people are everywhere. Black folks are not just African American. Black folks are all over the world. There are Black Latinos in Mexico, Central America, Latin America. What is the conditions of those folks? There are Black folks in Palestine, Black folks in Colombia. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on and on. We have some uncomfortable conversations to have as communities who are oppressed and exploited about the ways in which anti-Black racism hurts us all. But we can't take action on that if we don't actually have a conversation. And we certainly can't investigate that if we take Black out of the conversation. So, that's why we ask to continue to save Black Lives Matter. Because Black is not just a racial identity, it's also a political one. And when we look at the systems and the structures that are killing us, many, many of them were designed initially to kill Black bodies. It's just how it is. I wish it were different. I also want to talk a little bit, my brother asked me a question this evening, and I said we would talk about it in this talk. And that's the question of what we call intercommunal violence, or Black folks hurting or killing other Black folks. I have a lot to say about this, and I don't know if I can capture it all in this short talk. But what I will say is that yes, that happens. The question is not, when are we going to talk about it? Because we talk about it all the time. All the time. That's a conversation we are not afraid to have. White folks aren't afraid to have it either. Oh, y'all want to get free? Why y'all killing each other? Where we learn that from? You know, Martin Luther King said, and I'm paraphrasing, that we can't talk about Black on Black crime without talking about the violence of our government. We have to be concerned not merely with who murdered who, but also about the system and the way of life and the philosophy that is producing the murderers. Why are people killing each other? Money, things that our communities are systematically denied. Folks who live in communities where there is intercommunal violence understand that very deeply. If we want to rid our communities of interpersonal violence, we have to change the structural conditions under which we live. Because again, remember, we often talk about crabs in a barrel without acknowledging that the barrel is not the crab's natural habitat. White supremacy and racism create conditions where we hurt one another. That's real. White supremacy is deep. I was telling folks today at USD, it's a disease for everybody. What kind of world do we live in where you're raised to think that you are superior to someone else because of how you look? What kind of world do we live in where those of us who don't look like that are raised to believe that we are somehow inferior? That's the status of our nation. It's not just happening here in the US. world. Which is why, again, we say we need to dismantle anti-Black racism in all of its forms. Because it's not just a psychological disease. It's a disease that impacts our futures and our outcomes. Now, racism. Racism is white supremacy plus power. I love these conversations. Y'all heard about the FBI director? Yes. Yeah. Listen. The FBI director gave this statement. Something to the degree of we're all a little bit racist. In response to this epidemic of extrajudicial killings. So his excuse for police acting as judge, jury, and executioner is, yeah, they're racist, but so is everybody else. Everybody's a little bit racist. That was the response. That's not true, y'all. Everybody's not a little bit racist. I wish we were. We could fix that. People can go to therapy, you know what I'm saying? Like, love each other. That's not what it is. Racism is white supremacy backed by institutional power. That's just a big fancy way of saying white supremacy that determines your life chances. So, that means, for example, there's more than 1 million Black people locked in cages in this country. More than 1 million. Cages. And that more and more of those Black folks, because they really decimated Black men. So now, there's an increase in Black women who are going to prison and jail. For what? Economic crimes. Trying or defending yourself from violence in your home. It's the truth. Check the stats. What does it look like? In my town where I live, 30% of our school district is Black, but we're 60% of the suspensions. White supremacy backed by institutional power. Now, I want to talk a little bit more also about where we're going. That's why y'all came. You're like, this is cool. Is it going to last? What are the demands? What policies are you moving? What is your goal? So I'm going to answer that in 4.5 minutes. Where are we going? We're trying to get free. What are the demands? Same things we've been fighting for 500 years. My folks here wearing these Black Lives Matter shirts, the demands are on the back. Thanks y'all for doing that. Because I know y'all were getting those questions. We're like, listen. So what are they? Demand an end to police brutality in our communities. Sound familiar? Stop killing us, basically. Otherwise known as, we would like to breathe. Full and fair employment for all. End the school to prison pipeline. Stop mass incarceration. Food, housing, and shelter for everybody. These are things that we have been fighting for forever. And we stand on the shoulders of giants. We're ready to run the ball forward. So please stop asking us what are the demands. We're like, y'all taught us the demands. And now that we're taking the ball and we're running with it, y'all like, y'all know what you're doing. Slow down, take a seat. Right. so the question that we have to ask ourselves is why? And the fact of the matter is, this movement didn't start in 2013. It didn't start when Mike Brown laid steps away from his mother's home for 4.5 hours. It didn't start when Ayanna Jones Stanley was murdered in her home. She was 7. This movement started when we were brought here as slaves. So, can we get down together? We do have a lot to learn. But we need to work together in order to get there. We also have a lot to share. We have new tools. We live in a digital world where we can connect to people instantly anywhere in the world. How do we bring the wisdom and the creativity and the innovation of our generations together to get free? Those are the questions that we should be asking ourselves, not what are the demands? What are the policies? We can start with this. Right now, our federal government doesn't collect data on who's being killed by police. Can y'all believe that? I was talking to the news lady today, and she was like, you know what? When all this stuff started happening, and I just had my head down. Well, I was like, it's been happening. But when all this stuff started happening, I tried to do research. I put the research department on it, and we couldn't find any information about how many people were being killed by officers. We couldn't find it. That's why the Malcolm X grassroots movement had to write a report. And people always turn their nose up at stuff black people do. But let me tell you something. They have documented that every 28 hours, a black person in this country is murdered by police, security guards, or vigilantes. Now, you could not like the methodology. I know I'm a sociologist, I get it. But the fact of the matter is, if our government would do it, we wouldn't have to. If it mattered, if our lives mattered. If all lives mattered, our government would collect data on who's killing us, how many of us are being killed. Now, if our lives mattered, we would attach some accountability to that too. So right now, police departments don't have to report. There's no central way for them to report. And they still get paid. I spent time this summer in Ferguson training organizers. And let me tell you, the hardware that's out there, Ferguson is like this big, y'all. I had to look for it on a map, I didn't know. And that's not just public education, it's like it's a suburb. A suburb. 80,000 people. Let me tell you about this hardware they have. Tanks. Flash grenades. Military-grade weapons. For 100, 200 people. You pay for that. You pay for that. I pay for it. Why do we pay for that? Why do we pay for military-grade weapons in our communities? Why do they feel like they need military-grade weapons in our communities? This is a serious question. It's because there's a belief that we are animals that need to be harpooned, like in a safari. You think I'm kidding? But they do it in Oakland too. You get a protest of 100 people, and here come the tanks and the sound cannons. Do they do that in Piedmont? You ever seen a tank in La Jolla? Why are we getting used to seeing tanks in our communities? And then you ask, why are black people killing each other? What's happening right now is a rupture that is allowing for important cultural shifts to occur. Now, whether you like Black Lives Matter or not, and that is your prerogative, you're talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. This is a kitchen table conversation. And race in this country is being talked about in ways that it hasn't been in a long time. In a meaningful way. Even CNN got to talk about it. Cultural shifts are important. They change what we know as common sense. Right now, common sense is Black lives don't matter. But we're shifting that conversation. Whether you agree with it or not, that's important and should be celebrated. Because the way that that happened was not a hashtag. It was by folks in Ferguson saying, enough. Enough. It was by folks in Oakland saying, enough. Oscar Grant was murdered just a few blocks from my house. His daughter is growing up without a father. She's beautiful, y'all. She's beautiful. It happened because people in New York, people in Japan, people in Norway said enough. We need to celebrate and encourage that. What's next? We're just getting started. But we do want to make sure that folks know that yes, it's important to be in the streets. And we want to encourage everybody to continue to be in the streets. Not just for the sake of being in the streets, but for the sake of stopping business as usual. This has to continue to be a kitchen table conversation, whether you want it or not. One of my favorite tactics right now is called black brunch. Y'all heard about black brunch? Whole life. Listen, I love brunch. That's my thing. I'm like, it's my last day to like kick it, you know? So black brunch is a tactic. It's a whole bunch of black folks going to upscale restaurants where folks are brunching. And reading the names of those whose lives have been stolen by police, vigilantes, or security guards. Now, I want to encourage you to go on the internet and look it up. Look at the responses and the reactions. You get a lot of this. You get a lot of this. Those are important images. It tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about how much our lives matter. But here's the thing. You're eating, you're paying for that meal, you're not going anywhere until we're done. And now you have to think about it. Sitting there with your children. There are families who will never sit at the table with their children again. Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever you celebrate, there are seats at the table that are empty. That's not the way it should be. So, disruption is important. Direct action is a part of our freedom tradition. We've been doing it for a long time. A long time. A long time. And then also organizing. Not flyering, not papers, organizing.